Well, good evening, folks. Val Fennell here, Pennsylvania Director of Gun Owners of America, and welcome to our second episode of Candidate Cam. And tonight, we have a very special guest, is our GOA endorsed candidate for Erie County Sheriff, Brian Shank. And we also endorsed Brian for Erie County Council a couple of years ago. So, Brian, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Dr. Fennell. I appreciate it. It's an honor to be here, and the endorsement from you guys was just very humbling, actually. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Well, the point of Candidate Cam is really to give you an opportunity to talk about yourself a little bit, and also, some people may have comments and some questions, and we would answer those questions. And just to let the folks know, sometimes you have to get permission from Facebook to post to StreamYard. There's like a thing you have to press in order to authorize the connection between the two. So, it isn't that sometimes if you put a comment in or a question, it's not that we're ignoring you. Sometimes we just can't see it. So if you didn't do that step, and then it may not come through. So I just want to let people know that. So Brian, welcome again. And tell us a little bit about yourself and your background, your law enforcement background, your corrections background, and whatever else you would like to tell us about yourself.
Thank you. Sometimes that's one of the hardest things to do is to talk about yourself. We can talk about cars and helicopters and military, but to actually just sit down and talk to yourself, it's a tough one, but it's a simple story. My dad worked at GE, a union guy, just a normal middle-class life here in Harbor Creek, graduated from Harbor Creek High School, class of 1981. I really wasn't sure where or what I wanted to do with myself, so I decided to join the United States Army, and that was January 11th, 1983. You always remember your enlistment date and the date you got out, January 11th, 1987. So while I was active duty, I actually had a really kind of specialized MOS job. I was a photographer. And, when I was a photographer, we worked with the CID, the MPI, all the military law enforcement men and women. And I tell you what, I just looked at those men and women in uniform and saw what they did. And I said, man, that's something I want to do. So I got off active duty. I enlisted in the California Army National Guard as an MP. Then I'm like, I'm really, really enjoying this law enforcement thing. So I basically put myself through a community college, got my police credentials, graduated, and I was hired immediately with a local police department. And then I'm like, this is where I wanted to go. So that's where we stayed. We eventually moved back to Erie, Pennsylvania. Then my credentials didn't transfer. California and Pennsylvania, they don't like to talk to each other too well. So credentials didn't transfer. I had to go back to school. At that time, I was actually very blessed and in the right place at the right time. We had 2 state correctional facilities opening up. I applied, and it was funny during the interview. The captain's like, he looks at me and goes, "Shank, do you know what a shank is in a prison?" And I'm like, "Yes, sir. It's a homemade weapon that they use to kind of fight each other." And the captain looked at me and goes, "Well, welcome aboard. I guess you were destined to work in a prison." So 20 years later, my time there was well spent. I was on the fire and rescue team. We went to a state certified fire school. And then also being ex-military, of course, I went into the SWAT team. And, we got deployed out and we did things we can't talk about here in an open forum. But, we had to do what we had to do. And then once I retired, at the age of 51, I found myself kind of like, do I just want to ride around on my Harley all day, ride on my 4-wheeler, dirt bike? No, I really wasn't ready. I joined the local volunteer fire department. They have here in Pennsylvania fire police, and basically they work with the volunteer fire departments. We're the guys and men and women that we make sure that our firemen are safe. When they're out on the roadway with a motor vehicle accident, the firemen are so tuned into what they do. They'll step out in traffic, and we're there to make sure they don't. So then at that time, while I was there, the local Republican Party kind of reached out to me and said, "Hey, Mr. Shank, you kind of got this way with people. You talk well with people. You come off nice. Did you ever think getting into government?" I said, "Listen, I worked in a prison. I'm not that political guy. I'm used to telling people to turn around and cuff up and put them in a cell and go like that." So it was a little transition. I ran for county government. Here in Erie County, we have the home rule charter. We have a county executive, right, and we have 7 councilmen and women that represent the district. And I happen to be District 5, which is East County. Well, then, of course, about my second year into a 4-year term, the Democrat sheriff decided to retire. And I talked to the local Republicans. I talked to my family. And I'm like, I'm the guy that's really got the kind of credentials to do this. Been a former military cop, civilian cop, worked for Department of Corrections for 20 years. And now I kind of understand the government and county government and how it works. Mm-hmm. So we decided to take a run for it. And, up until lately, it was been pretty smooth. We didn't have too much problems. And now comes the ugliness of running a campaign. So yeah, that's what puts us where we're at today. We've had a pretty good run, a good summer. We did a lot of cool things that nobody's thought about. I have the Shank for Sheriff. It's an old retired police car and a nice big lit trailer we drag around. It's got Shank for Sheriff and American flag. And the one thing that when I put the trailer together, my lovely wife made a sign, and that sign says, "Say their names." And it's for the men and women that we lost in Afghanistan. So wherever my trailer goes, I always remind people to say their name. Yes. So that pretty much brings us to where we're at today, sir.
Yeah. And, we saw each other last weekend at the rally up in Erie, and then at my family's farm in Harbor Creek. And we certainly appreciate what you did for my family there. But let's go back to the sheriff for just a second. I mean, what do you see at your main role as the sheriff of Erie County? How would you describe yourself and differentiate yourself from your opponent?
Yeah, that's a great question. The sheriffs in Pennsylvania have a different role than you go down to Florida, Texas, where the sheriff is kind of like, top dog law enforcement of the county. Mm-hmm. Pennsylvania has some different rules, and, basically the Pennsylvania State Police are top dogs here. So the sheriffs here have a smaller role, which is a very important role, actually, where we take care of the security of the courthouse. Our deputies are in the courtrooms. And the one thing I personally am the most proud of what our deputies do is they're high school resource officers. These men and women work in the schools. And after such a horrible year last year, defund the police, the other great word that they love to say, the police, these men and women are actually with our young men and women, and they're putting a positive spin and a positive interaction with law enforcement. Sometimes these kids, it's the first time they've met a man or a woman in uniform and not just something on the TV. So they have a really important role. They're teaching the kids that cops aren't bad. Law enforcement's there to help them, and we don't want to defund them, and obviously we want to shoot them in the streets like dogs. That unfortunately has been happening, and my position has been crystal clear on the Second Amendment. And I tell you, it's under attack every day. Mm-hmm. Every day it's under attack. Even before it was really under attack, I know the story of the Erie 8, but the viewers might not know that.
Yeah, tell us about that. Tell that you're actually a pro-gun hero. Tell us why.
Thank you, sir. I appreciate that. Yep. Well, I guess they do kind of. If you want to have some fun reading, if you're totally bored, you have nothing else to watch on Netflix, just Google up the Erie 8, and it tells our story of this group of men and women that came together in the city of Erie to challenge the city of Erie's ordinance that was totally illegal. They decided on themselves to violate the Constitution of Pennsylvania and the United States, saying you cannot bring a firearm in a city park. We beg to differ. Shall not be infringed. I've read that and heard that like 1,000 times in my life.
Right.
So we got a permit. We got the gazebo. I have a sound system, and I have a big mouth. So I was one of the guest speakers. Justin Dillon of Open Carry PA. We put this thing together. We knew we were going to get some opposition. We knew it. Nothing against the men and women of the Erie Police Department. We have nothing to say negative about them. Of course, they're just soldiers doing their job. Mm-hmm. They met us in the park. They said, "Hey, you can't be here." We said, "Well, sir, we disagree. We have a permit. You guys can't bring your guns here." We actually brought our attorney, Joshua Prince, out of Pittsburgh with us. And he basically said, "Sir, officers, with all due respect, the men and women here have a permit, and the Constitution provides their access to carrying those firearms. Um, nobody got arrested. We had our rally. It was a peaceful deal. The Erie police stood there. We had nothing to say against them. They didn't say nothing against us.
Mhm.
Then a couple of weeks later, we got a ticket in the mail. What they
Ah,
had, yeah,
a
we got a ticket.
citation.
Yes, the citation.
Mhm.
It starts the story of Brian Shank. So we go to court, 8 of us. That's why they called us the Erie Eight. And
Yep.
what's funny? Every time I saw my name in the paper, I could not figure out why I was the last one. It wasn't
Mhm.
alphabetical. Well, then one day, one of the local newspaper decided to list our ages. I happened to be the elder of the group. So
Ah,
I was dead last. Well, the city of Erie, of course, had to fix in, I believe. We went to court. They did all 8 of us at the same time, which was kind of like, unique. Our attorney agreed to it. We agreed to it just to speed this trial up and get her done.
mhm.
So we were found guilty. We were fined 200 and some odd dollars, on a summary offense. Joshua Prince, our attorney, said, this is going to be easy, guys and gals. So he was excited. He's like, I'm an attorney, man. I get to go fight up in the big courts.
Yep.
Well, they got there, and Joshua Prince, of course, represented us, and 7-0 was the verdict.
In the
All
Commonwealth Court,
Yes,
because the city was violating the firearms preemption law.
right.
Title 18, Section 6120. So there's a certain organization out there, Michael Bloomberg's organization called Every Town, that is sent an attack piece out on you and said Brian Shank was broke the law in Erie. Actually, no. It was
Yeah,
Erie that was breaking the law. They were the ones
yeah.
that enacted a local ordinance to restrict carrying firearms in a city park. And as you know, that Title 18 6120 restricts localities from enacting ordinances regarding the regulation of firearms, right? In terms of lawful carrying, transportation, transfer, all that stuff. They can't do it. So in actuality, it was your case that proved that the city was violating the law. Unlike what the lies that the Everytown organization is putting out against you. You were not breaking law. You were actually upholding the law. You understood the law that Title 18 6120 forbid the city of Erie. So you stood in the gap between the citizens of Erie, and a tyrannical edict, an unconstitutional, and also just statutorily, forget about the Constitution for a second,
Right.
statutorily illegal, because they cannot enact local firearms ordinances to regulate firearms. Okay, Title 18 6120. So you won that case, proving
That
the
we're not
city was in the
criminals.
wrong.
Yeah, and
Yes.
of course, the literature that they in their hate mail they send out. I mean, people are telling me they're getting stuff every day that Brian Shank jeopardized the safety of the residents of Erie County.
Oh
Just really
my
bold and
God.
scary stuff.
The humanity.
I know. Considering we all were there, we all had handgun permits. We had our concealed carries. Open carry was there, and there was 300 people there, and every one of them was armed, and it was probably the safest place in the city of Erie
Brian,
that day.
in your career of law enforcement as a correction officer, as a military MP, have you ever seen a firearm jump out of somebody's holster and attack someone?
Negative, sir. I know my guns are in my safe right now. I hear the rifles kind of talk, and I think there's some kind of conspiracy to do something shady in there. But they're under lock and key and they're unloaded. They're harmless. So yeah, that was the story of the Erie Eight. And I tell you what, I have to make a guess here. That's why Mr. New York guy is really pissed at me personally, because I am exactly who they don't want in the sheriff's department. I'm not going to sit here and talk bad about my opponent. That's not what I do. I don't play dirty, but I'll just stay to the facts. On your own, what you told me, you sent my opponent an application, and he did what with it? Nothing. He didn't even fill it out.
Oh, the survey.
Yeah, the survey.
Right. Gun Owners of America, for our viewers, we send out candidate surveys for various offices. So we have one for sheriff, and Brian filled that survey out, got 100%. Chris Campanelli, we went from the time the primary was going on, we tried to get him to answer the survey, and he never answered the survey. And then just recently, oh, guess what? The Bloomberg organization has pumped $200,000. That's right, $200,000 into Erie County, Pennsylvania, not just to attack Brian Shank, not just to attack you, Brian, but as a pilot program to make this go nationwide so that they can mold sheriffs with Bloomberg's dirty New York City money and mold sheriffs in the image of New York gun laws. Now, I know Erie is like really close to New York, right? Like on the border.
Right.
And last weekend when I was there, I talked to some people that basically said, we don't go there. They mentioned that we don't go into New York because you know what? New York is a tyrannical state. New York has erased the rights of its for citizens, and we have people who moved to Pennsylvania to regain their constitutional rights, and we welcome them into Pennsylvania. In New York, escape from New York, right? They come to Pennsylvania.
I never thought of that one. That's a great one. We're gonna have to steal that one.
Right.
Escape
So
from New York.
let me make this perfectly clear, and I'm sure you agree with this. Is Mike Bloomberg, every town, we don't want your stinking gun laws, or New York gun laws in Pennsylvania. We don't want them. Okay. And that's what they're trying to do with this race. So not only were you a trailblazer, Brian, back with carrying firearms in city parks, proving that what the city did was illegal, contrary to what the Everytown organization said, but you're also ground zero for a national plan for Bloomberg to buy and pay for anti-gun sheriffs.
Yeah.
Okay.
You know what? The people of Erie County are smart. We had we actually have one station actually has a good reporter. I reached out to him with a press release, and he's like, "Hey, that's a great story. We'll bring you in." So we came in and we talked, and of course, half the conversation ends up on the editing floor, but basically the point that they made and that I made, I said the people of Erie County are smart. You know what? Mm-hmm. They don't want New York dirty money in Erie County to try to dictate how we, the people, live.
Right.
You want to do that over there on the border of New York. You knock yourself out. Stay out of Pennsylvania, because it isn't going to fly. I have my emails have actually kind of increased of people showing support. I had a gentleman send me an email and a small little donation, and it was just humble donation, but it was just the fact that he doesn't even live here. It's like 100 miles away. He's been hearing the story. I think he's fallen really good with Gun Owners of America. You guys have been great, shotgunning this information out. This huge story of how they're trying to manipulate local elections. If they figure they can hamstring a strong sheriff, I know I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and I'm ruffling feathers, and that's what we did with the city of Erie. And then the funny part of it is the mayor at the time was an attorney. Mm-hmm. So he knew exactly what we were going to do. He knew exactly how it was going to end, but he still had to flex his muscles. And I'm the mayor. I tried to fight those big mean gun guys, and we got a letter from the NRA during this whole Erie 8 deal. And they said, well, here's a small little donation for your legal defense fund. So they were paying attention. Mm-hmm. They're like, hey, this isn't going to cover everything, but, keep up the good fight, because what you're doing is for all of us. And it wasn't for Erie County. It was for America, because, you and I are both veterans. We took an oath. And
speaking of the oath, I'm a retired colonel, and we have a comment here from Lou. Lou says, when a public official takes his or her oath of office to protect and support our U.S. Constitution, it lasts a lifetime. Now, I don't know about you, I'm a retired officer, and by definition, under federal law, I'm still an officer of the United States.
Right.
Okay. I'm just a retired officer.
Right.
My oath does not expire.
No.
And I don't think your oath expires either, right?
No,
I checked.
No, I was an enlisted guy. I got out as an E5 buck sergeant, and on my trailer it's right there. My oath does not have an expiration date. I have no problem standing up to the people and say, you know what? I took that oath once. I took it as a county councilman. I took it as a police officer, and when I take it as sheriff, you bet your bippy, I'm gonna take that as the gospel.
Right, to support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and Domestic.
Yes, sir.
Right. So I take that oath very, very seriously. We have a few other people here from Erie that have chimed in. So this is really seminal, in my opinion. I mean, we have you. I mean, when I met you, you were running for Erie County Council. You asked for our endorsement at GOA. We gave you our endorsement because your history was so strong, being part of the Erie 8, challenging the illegal firearms ordinance in Erie, and and now you're at the front and center again for Michael Bloomberg. I mean, for this time nationally, $200,000 coming into a county race is an enormous amount of money.
Huge.
And so I'm just gonna throw this up here. This is your website, right? Is that correct?
Yep, that's it.
Yeah. So tell us where your needs are right now, what your strategy is. How are you fighting this large infusion of lies and capital from the billionaire anti-gun organization led by Michael Bloomberg?
As I said the other day down at Perry Square during my little presentation, I said, you know what? These people are pissing me off, and all that does is make me dig my heels in just a little deeper. And I got to give a shout out to the local newspaper. He quoted me accurately about saying I'm pissed off and I'm digging my heels in. So, sometimes that paper's a little on the liberal side, but, I give the reporter a credit. And, we're on third base running for home. There's not much we can do to counteract $200,000 worth of hate. But you know what? Social media is a huge tool. I mean, I have people chime in every day. We put out a nice press release. Basically, we asked my opponent to denounce this. I said, and he refused. We gave him an interview on the local media, news channel. They asked him, and he's like, "Well, why would I do that? I think I'm well qualified, and if they think I'm qualified, so be it." Wow. So, okay, you want to accept dirty, slimy money from New York, you knock yourself out, because that tells me a lot about your ethics and what you believe in. Because I believe in what I believe in, and no one's going to tell me otherwise. Maybe my wife. I do listen to her because she does my finance report, so I have to listen.
Yeah,
and,
I would too.
Yeah.
And there's one other thing, Brian, that you stood out again today. For those folks who don't know, the U.S. Attorney of the Western District of Pennsylvania, which is centered in Pittsburgh, cut a deal with the Allegheny County Sheriff William Mullen, to automatically revoke someone's license to carry firearms if they inadvertently bring their firearm through airport security. Now, that sounds really bad to people, but I just want to tell you, it is not a crime to do that unless you have criminal intent, and there's already a very stiff civil penalty for doing that. And so the U.S. Attorney has coerced Sheriff Mullen into saying, this is such a danger, we want to revoke the LTCF. Well, the problem is there really isn't any statutory justification for this. They may appeal to this loose, nebulous character reputation requirement, which is a real stretch in my opinion, right? And so we swung into action at GOA. We sent a letter. Our legal counsel drafted a letter, to Sheriff Mullen, explaining our position, and we copied that letter to all the sheriffs in the counties that are in the Western District of Pennsylvania's jurisdiction, which includes Erie, which includes Washington County. And so far we've had Sheriff Sloop from Butler County write a letter. We've had Sheriff Michael Cherner write a letter. We had Sheriff Wolfgang write a letter. We had Warren County Sheriff also said he would not participate in this coercion. And so far, nothing definitive back from William Mullen. But our GOA endorsed candidates in Western Pennsylvania, like you and Lou Rita in Washington County, have both written letters saying, look, if I am your sheriff, I am not going to participate in this coercion. Is that right, Brian?
That is correct, sir. And, my lovely wife and I, we sat down and we drafted it up. We want to get the wording right. We want to get the verbiage right. We wanted to send the right message. And I'm not the sheriff. I will be in a couple of weeks, but I'm not the sheriff right now. But on the top of that letterhead, it said Erie County Councilman Brian Shank and candidate for Erie County Sheriff.
Hmm.
So as a duly elected official of this county, I'm only the only councilman that's going to have the guts to stand up and say no. And when I go to the courthouse, we had a finance meeting. I proudly always carry my firearm. The deputies meet me at the door very professionally, and we secure the weapon, and I go on my merry way, and I come out, I get it, and we have no problems. Nobody got shot, no massive craziness going on. People need to really wake up. We've been banging on this drum for a long time, and my arms are getting tired for banging so hard. But you know what? That's why one of the reasons why I really truly ran for sheriff, because when I put that badge on and I take that oath, the next day I'm going to join the Constitutional Sheriff's Association of America, and I'm going to join my local FOP, and we're going to show the people of Erie County that we have a new direction. And we're also up the bat for a new county executive. We've had a Democrat controlled for quite a while. The sheriff is a Democrat. The majority of county councils is a Democrat. And you know what? I think when we look at the news and we see that guy in the White House has into the 30s approval rating within 10 months, hello, shells are going bare. Gasoline's going crazy. I know this sounds goofy, but there's no spray paint at Walmart. I mean, come on, that's an indicator that we have a problem. And what's that problem? I'm going to go with the White House.
Hey, let's go, Brandon.
My son's name's Brandon, and I had to explain the whole thing to him, but he's a good Republican, and he just turned 21. We went up to the local gun shop. We bought him a firearm. He came down to the courthouse, got his concealed handgun permit. I said, you go to a local gun shop and you take the safety course and you'll be good to go. So we're training him right, sir.
Awesome. That's awesome. And do you know, this is a question, I don't know this yet, but does the current sheriff in Erie County allow non-resident licenses to carry firearms applications, say like from Ohio?
To the best of my knowledge, yes. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. Erie County has been as a Democrat-controlled county, it's been pretty moderate in that department. I mean, really, I've never heard any complaints. I've never heard anybody getting arrested. I've never heard anybody having a problem because trust me, I would have heard about it. And even when I ran for council, they're like, well, who cares if you're a Second Amendment guy? Well, we're duly elected officials and we have to stop this from going on, because every time I turn around, chip away, chip away, chip away, chip away. And as soon as we turn around, it's going to be gone.
Yes, and if that isn't the case, would you change that policy and allow non-residents to apply for Pennsylvania LTCF in Erie County? That's a great question, and that's something when I put that star on and I take that oath, I will have a serious talk with our solicitor, and we're going to make sure that that's a legal thing, and make sure if it's good to go with our solicitor. It's legal. Yeah. Some sheriffs do it and some don't.
Right. But if it's legal,
yep,
it's good for me, because my solicitor signs off on it. Good for me too.
Yeah, it's legal. So the problem is some sheriffs do it and some sheriffs don't. And
right.
And so people who like my friend in New Hampshire, he goes to Center County to get his because some of the closer counties to the New York border or near would be closer to him. Don't do them. Some do. So you'd have to poll like 67 counties to figure out, do they do non-resident or don't they do non-resident? But it sounds like you're okay with it.
I'm fine with it, actually. Yeah. When you're living, come on, you're very familiar. We got New York on one side of us, Ohio on the other side of us.
That's right.
And and I find it offensive as an honorably discharged veteran, duly elected official. I love to ride my motorcycle, but as soon as I go into New York, I'm a felon. No, I'm not a felon. I'm a veteran. You know what? I've earned that right, and I have a permit that says I can, signed by the sheriff. But unfortunately, you step into New York, you're a felon. So
right, and again, and we alluded to this. The sheriff doesn't have a lot of law enforcement power, but to the extent that you do have that power, what would your message to Joe Biden and a Congress dead set against taking gun rights in Erie County? Would you refuse to enforce those unconstitutional laws?
Oh, absolutely. If I have to stand there by myself in handcuffs while I get drug away by the big guys, so be it. I worked in a jail for 20 years. I'm not scared. And you know what? All I have to do is just say some magical words like posse comitatus, and I've got deputies more than you've got. So, you got to know. You got to know this stuff. And, this is something that, again, my opponent, I believe, is kind of harnessed on this issue. He basically spoke on Facebook about, we should take care of veterans before illegal aliens. And the local party did an op-ed on the on that comment and basically called him racist in the local paper. His own party chairman chastised him like a little child in the paper about saying we should take care of our veterans before illegal aliens. I agree with him. Why not? But of course, that's not the Democratic marching orders. And I'm not trying to pick on and beat up the Democrats right now because, my mom and dad have been lifetime Democrats. They're from the Kennedy era. And I heard my, basically saying about how, I would never vote for another Democrat in my life. So, I mean, and I totally get that. And that's why we really have to make a stand. We really have to make a stand. We got to get out and vote, support these guys. You might not like the candidate, but support his values and where they're going.
Mm-hmm. Well, we're kind of getting towards the end. I don't like to have this go too long. We don't have any more questions that I can see coming through. So I'm just going to leave it open for you the last couple of minutes on the mic. What is it that you want the Erie, the viewers in Erie County watching this to know about you? And, why should they vote for Brian Shank?
Yeah, that's a great ending, and I appreciate that. First of all, thank you for putting this together.
Mm-hmm.
Gun Owners of America, you guys have been great. The love you show me, it's humbling when I see your email chain of all the thousands of people that have Brian Shank in their email today. But it's humbling, and I thank you. But basically, it's basically the common thread that we've been talking all night. Elections have consequences, good, bad, or indifferent. And if you're not registered to vote, unfortunately in Pennsylvania, you've missed that mark. It was the 18th. But, we had only a 20% turnout rate in our local elections on the primary. Get out and vote, people, please. Yeah. If you can sit back on your keyboard and complain all day about, oh man, my candidate didn't get in there. Well, what did you do about that? You didn't. So get out and vote. Vote for the right people for the right reasons. It's not a popularity contest. It really isn't. And it isn't who's got the coolest yard signs. It's about the people that are going to stand up and reflect your values and who you believe in and what you believe in. And if you don't think, some say, well, it's just a gun thing. Why do we have to make it such a gun thing? It's an amendment. It's the Constitution. It's the Second Amendment. There's a whole pile of them. You know what? They take away this one, they take apart this one, and they slice this one apart. Right. Then all of a sudden, we don't have those privileges anymore. So it's really, really, really important. Every politician says, hey man, this is elections, the most important one you know of. These elections are getting scary to where they're coming after our rights as civilians and people. Look at this shenanigans with the IRS overreaching into people's bank accounts. If you have a transaction over $600, I sure hope they make that a pile of burning crap. Because you know what? It's irrelevant. I know you guys know what's in my bank account, but now you guys are just telling me we're going to know what's in your bank account. It's none of your business. And, vote these people out of office. Vote them out. We have the power to do it, but we have to get together. We have to unite, and we have to get out and vote this out of office because it doesn't work. It isn't working for me. The Erie County people have been bombarded with hate coming out of New York. They're smart. I've talked to them. There's a couple people like, ooh, that's some scary stuff you're involved in. It's lies, people. Just get through it. Google it up. We went through all the shenanigans in the primary. Now the hacks from New York are coming after us again because they know they have a strong sheriff that's going to stand up for the people, and that's what they don't want. And I mean, I'm not picking on the sheriff out of Pittsburgh, but as soon as I read that article, I'm like, well, geez, I think the mayor of Pittsburgh is an anti-gun guy too. Yes,
I've heard.
Yeah, I heard a couple stories. So I birds together flock together, man. Here, so what? That's Pittsburgh. That's LA County, not my problem. I'm going to focus on Erie County as a duly elected county councilman. We've reflected on that. I'm the no guy. When they wanted to bribe the county employees with $300 at a total of $365,000. I was very proud of my Republican men and women on council. It was actually the Democrats said yes, the Republicans said no. Well, unfortunately, there's that many of them,
Right.
and there's only that many of us.
Right. All right. Hey, thank you, Brian, for being on. GOA endorsed candidate for Erie County Sheriff, Brian Shank. Vote for him on November 2nd. When this is posted to YouTube or on Facebook, be sure to share this video with your pro-gun family and friends. Thank you very much. And as I always say when I conclude a broadcast, stand up for your rights and stand fast.
I salute you, sir. Thank you. Rock on.
Take care.